Hey everybody. So I recently got back from a trip down to southeastern Arizona. I met some colleagues from the USDA down there. They were doing some genetic research on bees and I got to tag along and help them collect specimens. So I actually left on Earth Day in the afternoon. It's like a 12-hour drive, so drove for a long time. So really pretty areas to drive through, so I don't mind it too much. Camped in my car, got up early the next morning to continue the drive to where I was meeting him down, kind of in the corner of Arizona, New Mexico, and Mexico. Started seeing flowers as it warmed up. This is mesquite. Saw some honeybees on it. As it warmed up more during the day, I saw some other things. This is a male mason bee, osmia. Finally, I got down and found my colleagues. They were collecting along the side of the road on some thistles. It was really dry this spring, and so most of the flowers were right on the sides of the road. This is a Eucera visiting this thistle. So then we went all the way down right on the border. There's the border wall right there. So that mountain there is in Mexico. We are on the Arizona side, going down a dirt road to this site where there's quite a bit of blooming mesquite flowers. As we got out of the car, I noticed this lizard. This is a leopard lizard. We have these up in Utah too, but this was a really dark one. Pretty big lizard. They're cool, really cool lizards. So as we started looking around, there's bees on the mesquite, but I noticed these bees flying around the ground. And if I look closer, there's this stump, and in this stump, there's abandoned beetle burrows. A lot of cavity nesting bees will look for empty holes to kind of build their nest in. So there was both cavity nesting bees, but also parasites around this stump. So I sat here and watched it for a little while. This right here is a cuckoo wasp. It's metallic green. They're super pretty wasps. These will actually sneak into the nests of bees and lay their eggs. Lots of bees also flying around the ground. And so we collected for a while here. You can see in the background some of my colleagues' nets going back and forth across the mesquite. What I found here on the ground was a small parasitic bee in the genus Stelis. A really cool bee, and they were happy to have it for their genetic study. They caught several of them also. This was a really small bee. I actually kept one alive and brought it back to where I was staying so I could get some pictures of it, what you'll see right here. I wish I got a scale bar in this, but a really cool little bee. A lot of the mesquite was either blooming on the roadside or by these dry washes. So we spent some time kind of walking up and down the washes, collecting bees. A lot of different diversity here on some of these flowers. What I was finding probably most abundantly was leafcutter bees. And there's lots of different kinds of leafcutter bees. Leafcutter bees carry their pollen on their belly. So if you see a female leafcutter bee, you see kind of they have this hairy underside of the abdomen. They also have big jaws because they cut leaves. But I saw this one right here. Look how big those mandibles are, long and skinny. If you look close, that's a different subgenus of leafcutter bee. Here's another leafcutter bee just kind of resting. There was a few cactuses blooming. This is a cactus bee in the genus Diodasia. It didn't stay and visit very long, but one really cool thing about cactus, if you actually touch those stamens, the pollen portions of the flower, they will actually close in around that pistil. So you can see how fast that closes. So if you're a big bee and you go down in there, the stamens actually close over you and kind of cover you with pollen. In a lot of these areas with bare dirt, it's good to watch the ground. There's a bee right there. If you look at the ground, you can see these bees kind of hovering around the ground. Some of them are parasites looking for nests. Some of them are other bees that are resting on the ground. This is Ashmediella. Often you can find them on the ground. Okay, so I said we were collecting down here right by the Arizona-Mexico border. Let me just show you. So this is the road that we are collecting on. And right over that way, I don't know if you can see it in the phone, that's the border wall. It's about 200 yards away or so. So this is the newly constructed border wall. It didn't used to be this big, and it extends way down there over into New Mexico and beyond. So we actually spent some time just down along the border wall. I hadn't seen this new one since they built it a couple of years ago. And you can see there are some ways for insects to pass through, but no large animals. I think it's still largely unknown on how this wall is going to affect the biodiversity on both sides of the border there. So there was a few other things blooming. This is ocotillo, a really cool plant. Later in the summer, it gets leaves. Right now, it's just this thorny stalk with these brilliant red flowers on the top. So in southeastern Arizona, because I met my colleagues down there and they're doing a research project, I was fortunate enough to stay at the Southwest Research Station. in the Chiricahua Mountains. Such a pretty place. I just love these cliffs in the background. This is in the early morning the next day. Such a neat place to stay. This is one of my favorite mountain ranges in the Southwest, and I've been here several times with my family. And the research station is a great place. I was here as a graduate student studying velvet ants, and I've come back many times to study bees as well. So in the little dorm room that I had to myself, after collecting all day and then doing a lot of the photography, I took some time to pin the specimens I had. So the little bees, people often ask me, how do I get the little bees on a pin? I actually use Elmer's glue. So what I do is I'll take the pin, put a little teeny bit of Elmer's glue around the pin. I can't really see it right here because my camera doesn't want to focus on it. There's a little bit of glue on there. And then I will just touch that glue to the right-hand side of some of these small bees. These are some fairy bees that I collected. So then the bee just kind of sticks to that glue, and then when it dries, it is attached on there. It's a way more efficient method to process little specimens than some people prefer to glue them onto a little paper triangle. Okay, I just finished pinning the bees that I collected today. So you can see the label has the date, where the location was that I collected them, and the flower they were on. And I pinned the bigger bees and glued the smaller bees on there. So I've already taken pictures of all of these, and now they are pinned. So it's great to be in the field because you get to see a lot of wildlife, butterflies. In this area, there was a lot of wild turkeys. Right after this video, this big tom decided to display to a female that was down the wash, but I missed it in the video. Just such a pretty area with the flowers on the roadsides, and we get to spend time in some of these desert canyons. There wasn't very much water flowing in any of these creeks, but there were flowers blooming nearby. This is a small sweat bee in one of these flowers. So we also went out into the valley. This is out in the flats of New Mexico, looking for a specific bee. So my colleagues had found it a couple days before, and we wanted to go back to get specimens for some of this genomic work that they're doing. We found it. This is Zacosmia. This is the female. The Zacosmia males are weird because they have these giant fat antennae. We also found some nest sites here. So there's the nest entrance. This is the pile of dirt that the bee kind of dug out from the nest. And when we waited around, my colleague caught this. This is a leafcutter bee that was nesting in the ground there. We also found this, which is Coelioxys. It's a parasite on those leafcutter bees. We found other parasites. This is Dioxys. Dioxys will parasitize the nest of mason bees. So we were getting a lot of good different bee genera for their genetic study. So then we went back to the Southwest Research Station. Again, it's such a cool place. We see a lot of these acorn woodpeckers up there, just kind of crazy looking birds. The next morning we went down in the valley next to the mountains. And again, on the roadsides, there was stuff blooming. This is creosote bush, which often brings in a lot of bees. Not a lot blooming, not a lot flying around this creosote bush, but nearby there was some more mesquite, and there was tons of fairy bees hovering around this mesquite. It's really cool to watch. Many of them were males, probably looking for females, but also feeding on the mesquite. We also found this Epiolus. Epiolus is a parasite, a parasitic bee. It specifically goes after the nests of Calides, the polyester bees. So we also saw some of those polyester bees on this creosote bush. Saw some other wildlife. This is a gopher snake. These are widespread across the country with different color variants in different areas. Up the mountain later that afternoon, there was some lupin blooming. Not a lot of bees on the lupin. Such a pretty flower, especially in that setting. We did see some insects on it, and I thought the red and the purple here was a nice contrast. Later on, we found some carpenter bees. This is a big female carpenter bee. We found several species down here. Carpenter bees are some of the biggest bees in North America, some of them over an inch long, which is really cool. Another thing that we saw pretty regularly down in those canyons is this small white-tailed deer. This is a subspecies of white-tailed deer called the Coues deer. It's actually a really small deer. You can't tell from this video, but it's almost the size of a goat. They're pretty neat. We also happened to see some javelina. I don't see these very often, but one morning I saw them right on the sides of the road. This video is actually taken out my car window. They just let me drive right up to them and watch. Such a weirdly proportioned animal. I also saw a roadrunner with a lizard in its mouth. You can see why they call it a roadrunner. I thought it was really cool how it crossed the cattle guard, so I slowed the video down. Check this out. Like tiptoes across. So in addition to all the wildlife we saw, we did catch a lot of different kinds of bees. So I'll just go through some of these real fast. This is Agapostemon. We also caught Andrena, some mining bees, both females and males. You can see the white face of this male Andrena. Andrena are more common in the spring. We saw an Anthidiellum. This is in the family Megachilidae, related to leafcutter bees. We also saw Anthidium, related to Anthidiellum. Look at those jaws on that. We caught several different kinds of Anthophora, digger bees. There's males and females. This male has a white face. This is a small Anthophora in the subgenus Micranthophora. We got Ashmediella on the ground, as I mentioned before. We caught a male centris. We didn't catch many female centris. We're probably a little bit early. Males often come out before the females. We got a Dianthidium. They also often look kind of wasp-like. Lots of parasites like this Erychrosis. We caught a Eucera, which are common spring bees. We caught Hoplites. Melisodes was out. This is a Nomata, a really cool colored Nomata. That's Osmia, lots of different kinds of Osmia. Several kinds of fairy bees in the genus Perdita. One of my favorite bees, because of the smiley face on its back, is Triepiolus. It's actually a parasite, even though it looks friendly because of the smile. We saw lots of butterflies and beetles, and just overall it was a really cool trip. Such a beautiful area. It's fun to spend time out in the field, to be in the backcountry. I didn't add any of my colleagues to this videos because I didn't get their permission, so I just want to make you know that it wasn't just me down there. I was with this team of bee researchers. It was great to be with them. So hopefully that gives you a small taste of what it's like to go out in the field and do some bee research. Mostly it's just a lot of fun, a lot of long days, but it's so worth it. Thanks for watching.